PAX, Journey Home, Chapter 33. Pax recognized his boy, even though Peter's voice was deeper and his frame was taller. Even after a year, he knew him. He barked and sprang for the bank as Peter came flying down the hill on the other side of the river. But just as Pax was poised to dive in, he heard a frightened cry from his kit. He took one more look at his boy and then hurried back to join her under the hemlock tree. The kit had been terrified, waking at the close shout of a human and finding herself alone. Pax's presence comforted her, but when Peter's call came again, she startled. "That is my boy. He is not dangerous. I will visit him across the river while you sleep." The kit pressed close to him. "You are not alone when I am out of sight." Still, the kit looked up anxiously as Peter called again. Pax guided her to the edge of the hemlock skirt. "You can watch from the shore." But the kit did not want to travel out. She bit at her left hind leg, which was trembling, and then she relieved herself. Only a small splash, then crawled back inside. She curled up on the bed of soft needles, flicked her tail clean, and then curled it over her nose. Pax settled himself beside his daughter, while Peter's calls grew fewer and then ceased. At last the kit closed her eyes. Pax waited until he was sure she was asleep, then returned to the river bank. But his boy was gone. The next day, once the kit had fallen into her heavy morning sleep, Pax crossed the river. At the last spot he had seen his boy, halfway down the slope between the old mill and the river, he sat down. The sun was bright, the air mild, the breeze from the west so he would scent any danger to the kit. Pax waited, and soon his old friend emerged from the wooded trail. Pax shivered with pleasure. He leaped up and ran, barking. He rubbed his cheek against Peter's leg to refresh their bond. When Peter dropped to his knees and threw his arms around Pax, he returned the embrace with a hard push into his boy's chest, feeling the heartbeat he used to know as well as his own. Then he inspected Peter to reassure himself that his boy was well. After the greeting of hugs, they played the running and falling game, the wrestling game, the hiding and finding game, all the old games. Their familiarity was a joy, but then something unfamiliar happened. Panting from wondering, Peter gulped from water from a jug and then poured some into his cupped hand and held it out to Pax, urging him with a concerned voice. When Pax did not drink, Peter grew upset. Over and over he poured water and offered it until finally Pax took some. After that, they lay side by side in the meadow. Peter stretched out with his chin propped on his fist. Pax tucked his paws beneath his chest. The sun warmed their backs as their breaths became calm again with grassy air. Both of them kept their heads turned towards the river, Peter's face intent, as if he were trying to understand something at its movement. Pax keeping watch on the hemlock just above the bank, where his kit slept. Sometimes Peter reached over to pluck pine needles from Pax's fur, and Pax loved this grooming that Bristle would have done. Sometimes Peter's hand drifted over to scratch Pax's ears, a pleasure Pax hadn't felt in a year. Once the surprising salt water streamed from Peter's eyes. He wiped his face and then rested an arm over Pax's shoulder for a long time. But mostly what Peter did was vocalize, much more than he used to, in a variety of tones, from pleased to distressed. Pax contributed a companionable grunt or purr when his boy seemed to want it, but otherwise was quiet, until the moment when he sensed his kit wake across the river. Pax jumped up and barked to her. He took off at a run. He did not look